And good day, good people. You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com. This is Lifting the Veil, and I am your host, Cari-Lee. Today we are joined once again, first time on air on AmericanFreedomRadio.com, author of Way of the Weirdo, Jason Gregory. We did a pre-recorded show earlier this summer. And now we're going live. Jason, how are you today?
I'm great, Cari. It's early over here, but it's a nice morning start.
Beautiful. You know, it's very cold in Manitoba, and there's snow on the ground, but we have sun today, and that's huge because in the winter you don't really get a lot of sun with all the cloud cover. So today we've got a lot of sun here, and it's a beautiful day. It's warmed up a bit, so I'm getting the evening sun and you're getting the morning sun. Quite nice.
Yeah, well, look, it's been crazy weather all over the planet this year, and it's hot in Bangkok.
Now, okay, the last time I spoke to you, you were in India.
Yeah.
Now let's tell the listeners a bit about you and what you do and where you've been in the last little while, just to catch them up. I mean, I already know, where you were and all the moves that you've done, and I can't wait to talk about that a little bit more because there's different reasons for why you moved and different things that you went through. But let's freshen the people up from your time in India to where you are now.
Well, since India, I did a lecture tour of Europe, and then I actually came back from Europe to Nepal, where I've been before, and it's a place that I'm quite fond of, and I lived there for about 3 months. But yeah, certain things sort of put me in a situation where a lot of people are being tested sort of this year, so I had to sort of make a move from Nepal to Thailand for various reasons. But I'm here at the moment, and I'm completing my second book, and I've actually completed my second book, and I'm just in the finalising process there. And so I'm here at the moment. And for those who don't know me, I'm the author of Way of the Weirdo and the co-creator of The Sacred Sound of Creation.
Yeah, and you did that with, I can't claim him as mine, but our wonderful video editor, Justin. Justin, we love you so much. Anybody that doesn't know, everything from Lifting the Veil that you see on YouTube on our channel, Lifting Veils, all that pretty promotion that you see and everything that tugs at your heart, that's all Justin. I give him little ideas, and he makes them into big, beautiful productions. And he did the exact same thing. The two of you put something absolutely incredible together with The Sacred Sound of Creation. Anybody who's listening right now, check that out on YouTube. It's a seminar that you did, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure where it was, though.
Yeah, no, it was in Sydney last year, about actually this time last year. And, I did that on the Reality Unplugged tour. And the film was made intentionally for a film, so it was filmed. It was the filming that you see in that is not actually on the tour, but it was a presentation that I felt had value and shouldn't be lost in the ether. So we put it together in a film.
And I know so many people are really glad that you did. I see it being passed around and shared everywhere on social sites. So thank you for what you've done. Justin, thank you for what you've done. Anybody that doesn't know, Way of the Weirdo, I'm just going to read the synopsis here, is a book set out in a journey-style atmosphere where you, the reader, need to make a choice in the search of your own existence. Unlike other books, Way of the Weirdo goes into true root cause of all of our problems here on Earth, while uncovering what the symptoms of what that disease is. Along the journey through the pages of this awe-inspiring book, you will gain a better understanding of why our world is the way that it is, while unlocking the truth behind who you are. In this discovery, we find that eternal freedom, which we all hear about but never experience. Such is the essence of the Way of the Weirdo. That is, that this extraordinary book will take us from a blind belief to direct knowing. It's something that I've been able to. I was gifted this book from Jason last year. We had actually been trying to do an interview for almost a total year before we did our first one, and it was completely well worth the wait. I was very happy to have the time to talk to you. The book is something. Can you tell the listeners where they can get the book?
Yeah, you can get it anywhere online. You can get it through Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble or Powell's Books, or you can just go to my website, oneworldwithin.com, and you'll find it there. Yeah. And, it was well worth the wait, Cari, the first interview, so let's see what we can do today, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Now, no pressure. Something that you mentioned is that everybody seems to be getting tested this year. And it's something that I can say for sure I'm going through myself. This entire year has been like one big, massive test of strength, test of character, test of faith, test of trust. Absolutely everything. Things that you thought that you dealt with a long time ago are kind of like right there at the surface all of a sudden, making sure that you get it almost. How have you been dealing?
Yeah, I've been good. It's been a wild ride this year, like there's been ups and downs. It's like the pendulum swings harder for some reason in this year. I don't know if there's an energetic quality about that, but everyone that I know who is more awake and aware, I don't know if it's probably their unconscious at play, but everyone's sort of having their own particular tests and their own ways. And like you said, a lot of things that haven't been dealt with in the past are sort of rising to the surface. And, it might be all of our conscious attention that's gone into this year as well, and this is why it's our experiences are being affected like this. But, for me, it's been a wild ride. Like, I've had a great European tour. I've had sometimes struggles with health because of certain situations on where I live. Like, in saying that, where I was living was, especially in Nepal, was a great place, but at the same time it lacked a lot of things in the nutritional sense.
Well, let's talk about that a bit, though, because it's so important to understand that you think that you can go just about anywhere and get good quality food. When you say that you were having a hard time getting good quality food and keeping your nutrition up, can you give the listeners an example of what you mean?
Well, basically, when you go to places like, say, Nepal, and you go up into sort of isolated places, up into the Himalayas, there's not, like, Nepal's a great country. It's still predominantly people live on the land, but as the machine, has grown, its tentacles reach far. So a lot of the people are living on, there's still some organic food, but there's a lot of canned food, etc. That it's not the best sort of stuff. But for myself, it was kind of an awakening for myself, because I wasn't paying attention to my physical health, and I was so focused on writing the book that I was just eating whatever food. Like I never eat meat, but that's not a problem in those places because it is vegetarian. But there's a high sort of there's a lot of acidic food in India and Nepal, and for myself, I live my whole life not my whole life, but my last 5 years has been a mainly alkaline diet, which it sort of threw me off kilter, but I'm back to my best now. So, but yeah, for anyone that is traveling those countries, they will know that, and it just depends on, I suppose, how sensitive your physical organism is. For myself, I've always had a very sensitive physical organism, which is in some way a good thing and in some way a bad thing.
Definitely. That's something that we all have to keep in mind, is that something that I admire about you is the fact that you can recognize exactly where the disease is coming from, whatever it is, whether it's what you're putting into your body or state of mind. And one thing's for sure, that when a writer sits down to write, the last thing that they're thinking about is eating. You get so immersed.
It's kind of like that. It was like, when I was up there, it was like the first 2 months was sort of like, the first 8 weeks, I should say, was sort of like tunnel vision and just concentrating on the book. And, for myself, I have my own sort of spiritual practices that I do, and I guess that there was just a lot of stress that accumulated at that time for some reason. But it's dealt with now, and onward. So
onward and upward. Here we go. Now the new book. The new book is something that I'm very interested in. Do we know when it's going to be in publication? And let's just talk a little bit about what it's about.
Okay, what it's about. Well, we get into a lot of things. A couple of the topics we spoke about actually last time, Cari. But we can go into other deeper categories as well. But I can't give the name of the book. But actual time of publication, I'm not quite sure. I'm still in the process of organising with the publisher and editor at this time. But as for the book itself, what I've done is, because of my own sort of studies and a lot of the ancient wisdom traditions and shamanic cultures, is I've condensed the book into a modern readable language that we can hopefully, the collective can try and assimilate hopefully for the first time, and we can give sort of credence to what their knowledge was and see if we can bring that to the forefront for the first time. Now, a lot of the things why I mention that is because in a lot of the ancient cultures they do speak about blending in with the organic sort of nature of the world and why that is imperative. And a lot of us don't really know why they talk about a lot of these things, because we just think of the organic world as sort of the physical world. So, the agricultural world and the mineral and the animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us do, a lot of people in the modern day, even the people who are aware, do believe that, the human being for some reason is not part of that organic world. And this kind of ties in with the Chinese philosophy of Tao and the concept of, not the concept, but the knowledge of Wu Wei, which is, we have our own erroneous projections about that in the Western world, where we think that Wu Wei means actually passivity or not doing anything, sitting on your ass, laziness, which it actually doesn't mean that at all. Wu Wei is in a sense non-doing, but at the same time it's not forcing. It's not forcing. It's
the beauty of allowing.
The beauty of allowing. It's trying to see how all of the forms in reality are interdependent, and trying to understand what Shangzu said by the great master Shangzu said by he could see the infinite in all things. Now, a lot of people can put that into a New Age context, but what he's saying is that, if we can, for once, for the first time in history, trust each other and trust the natural world and its processes and align with that, then our natural growth, not just collectively but individually, will happen from that. But we've never truly given that concept a full hearing, as a species, because we often hear that and we often align that with passivity or, what's that going to achieve? You know what I mean? Like, because we've got to bring certain people to justice, or I don't like the present government that I'm in, on all of these sort of ephemeral problems that people have, which they don't last anyway. And the whole idea of Wu Wei is aligning with trust and knowing that there's an organic process of the universe which is spontaneous. It's not strung out in a linear fashion. So, our problem in the modern world is that we think everything is a linear model, and this is why systematic, yeah. And this is why anything, according to the ancients, according to shamanic cultures, Buddhists, Taoists, authentic Hindus, etc., they know that anything that is of a linear value is actually, it's an illusion in a sense, because the way that the universe is not linear. It's not linear. If you understand the processes of how the universe works and how not even just the physical world, but the mental and the spiritual world is in comparison to it, everything unfolds. Everything's like a flower. So everything has a particular pattern to it. And what we see from a mental point of view, because of our conditioning and our upbringing as a child, is we see things, in a linear mold. So we think that things need to be corrected. We look at certain prophesied dates for salvation. We look at certain governments that need to be brought to justice. But the thing is, governments themselves, banking institutions, religious institutions, and, corporations are all, in their truest context, an illusion, because they are built on a linear premise, which that's not how the universe is. So, and this all ties in with, I don't know if you're familiar with a Russian philosopher, Peter Kropotkin. He was in the 1800s, and Peter Kropotkin spoke about natural orders and how they naturally emerge and just bring order naturally if you let them. And his whole theory was called Kropotkin's anarchy, because it flied in the face of Darwin's model and of why we have banks and corporations, etc. Because he believed that if you just left humanity alone to their...
Oh, with that, we'll be back after this break. Sorry, Jason.
That's right.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Welcome back to AmericanFreedomRadio.com. You're listening to Lifting the Veil. Again, I am your host, Cari-Lee, and today we are joined by Jason Gregory, author of Way of the Weirdo, and a new novel coming out, or book coming out this 2013. I'm going to take a fancy guess at that is yet to be titled, and I'm anxiously awaiting that, as I know are several of the listeners today. Now, before we went to the break, you were talking about the Russian author, and he's saying that if you were to leave humans alone, can we just back up a little bit, because this is important. I want the listeners to hear this train of thought finished off.
Yeah, for sure. Well, see, Peter Kropotkin, he sort of opposed the common thread in the 1800s, where everyone sort of believed in Darwinian's model and the linear mode of thinking, that we need corporations, governments, banking institutions, etc. But he opposed that because he understood the processes of nature, the processes of the universe. He understood what we were speaking about earlier with the Wu Wei, with the not forcing but the allowing. And he understood that things in the universe are spontaneous and are not strung out in a linear fashion. So he created a thing. Well, it wasn't really created. Well, the theory was created by him, but the name wasn't created by him, which is Kropotkin's anarchy. But it's basically that if you were to leave civilization alone, that naturally, because we are part of the natural world, we would naturally develop a system, a pattern system that would be organic, without the need of governments, without the need of corporations or banks, etc. So that was his model. He was sort of laughed at and frowned upon because, we don't trust each other and we think that everyone's a foreign enemy. But, if we could do this, I believe it would happen as well, only because of how we are intrinsically part of nature. Like, we need to come back to these original understandings of the ancients, because the human being itself is just an expression of nature, an expression of consciousness. It's not, we've got to sort of get out of these new age ideologies, I believe, of that, we were genetically modified, or that we come from a star being, or that, somehow that there's some reptilians on this planet. I don't believe that's true. I think that's a lot of new age jargon. Because when you understand the processes of the cosmos, of the universe, you see that natural patterns of a planet has to express itself as the human being, because it's one of the only ways that a planetary body can physically express itself and physically embrace itself. The problem is with that is, we have this mode of, who are we and what is our position in the universe. So we develop a conditioning. And then this conditioning puts us against the cosmos. So, and for those who want to study, Peter Kropotkin's work, it's Kropotkin is spelled Kropotkin. I think I probably get that wrong, but you can Google him up and you'll find out his work. But it's just in that trusting, in that understanding that look, we are part of intrinsically part of a planet that is part of a universe, and our consciousness actually, which a lot of the ancients knew, the human consciousness is to try and fully embrace of how all of these forms is somehow an essence of a substantial reality, of an underlying formless world, which the ancients called Tao or Brahman or void or Sunya in Sanskrit. And a lot of people call it Pachamama or whatever in a lot of the shamanic cultures, but there's an underlying essence to the world of forms. So if you understand that the world is spontaneous, we don't live in, you could say, the Judeo-Christian idea of the world where we are in a sense created from without. Where the idea of the true idea of the ancients, especially in China and in India, is that the world has grown from within to without. So there's no difference between the within and the without, but it's grown like a flower, like how a flower blooms. A flower is not created from without. A flower blooms from within. And when you understand processes in nature, the human being is the same. And expansion in consciousness works the same. Yet we don't see it that way because we think somehow we are created. And, that's not the way that the universe is.
No, definitely not. I don't know if anybody out there checks out Starscream on YouTube, but he talks about this a lot, the microcosm and the macro, and the idea that we are just these small little teeny tiny pieces of the bigger picture, and inside of us are these tall little teeny tiny pieces of what we are, of what the universe is. So none of this to me is foreign. None of this sounds like it's impossible or it's not true. A lot of what I see going on is a lot of disinformation to make sure that we completely continue to stay disconnected and fight each other. If we were to start just allowing, and that's very difficult. I'm this last month, I know everybody's heard me every single show. I'm sick. Okay, so here's the deal. Yeah. It's all come down on me. All these little things that I've been dealing with, it's stripping away all these layers for me. That's the way that it's working in my world. That's how my body's, everything about me is telling me to slow the heck down and see what's unfolding before you and stop trying so hard. In all honesty, go ahead.
And that's great, Cari. These are some of the revelations in the quickening as well, you know what I mean? Like we start to unravel sort of actually why we're going through this hyper speed of time, you could say, or this hyper pattern, because we've got, oceans and oceans of information, but not a drop of wisdom. So we've got so much information. That's, in a sense, what makes the time accelerate so fast, because, our conscious experience and the time that we experience, they mutually arise together. There's actually no difference between them. So, the more information that we are thirsty for, the faster time is accelerating. You can actually visit. Sorry, you go.
We should be asking for everybody's asking for the wisdom. We are. Tell me we're not. Everybody on the planet is screaming out for wisdom or for knowledge, but not the wisdom to know what to do with it. So we're faced with all of this knowledge, right in our faces, but it's the asking of, okay, give me the ability to have the wisdom now to know what I'm supposed to do next.
Exactly. And the problem is that because we've built such a highly intellectual society, we only really stimulate the intellectual brain. We don't really stimulate the emotional brain and the heart. So we have an undying thirst for information, and a lot of the information we're looking at, again, is over-analysing the situation, bringing us more into the detail, sort of what I call the warrior's state of perception, not the sage's, where you're so caught in the detail, you get into a state of confusion, or you want to fight certain implements. You get far away from the knowledge of what we were talking about earlier, the Wu Wei of the allowing of the universe to take its course, and you aligning with that. Because, we're sort of not taught these modes when we were a child. We're sort of taught that, Cari, you go to school and, you make sure you're successful, and all of these things we're taught in such a systematic way, and it doesn't align you with actually what the universe is doing. It's sort of putting you in against it. So we're actually taught in its truest sense that we're separate from the cosmos. So because we have this mode of perception that we're separate from the cosmos, what's the natural result of that? It's that we try to lord it over nature, and we're all savvy to the destruction of the earth. In my personal opinion, the earth can never be destroyed because it's a self-correcting system in that sense. But, so is the human organism as well. But, we've got to fully embrace, I feel, the idea of not forcing ourselves upon anything. But again, that begins with the individual. That begins with the true intuition of it, the true understanding of it. The problem with all of us is our conditioning gets in the way, because we find these prickly situations and we feel, wow, like I can't really just let this go because it's a situation that's just, it just keeps coming up. And the whole thing is just let it go, because it's a pattern that's dying. So the more you try and feed it, the more it survives. And this is the whole thing this is a beautiful thing, actually, I find, with the revealing of certain forces on this planet who have kept civilization down, opposed to the conspiracy movement. Because what I see is a process of sort of revealing and falling away is what I see. But, as we are intellectual animals at the moment, is we see the tyranny and we go, well, wait up, these guys have got to be brought to justice. We've got to look further into the detail of the matter, and this is what will bring us freedom. And it's like, no, this whole situation is here to see that something is falling away and something new is arising. So, like a skilled martial artist, instead of coming into the fight with force, let them overextend their reach, and you apply the slightest pressure and they fall on their ass. So, this is a metaphor for all situations in life, actually. But, again, because of our highly advanced intellect, we don't see things that way, because we overanalyze. We're a scientific race that sort of has lost their spiritual intuition, and I feel that a lot of the new patterns that are emerging are sort of saying to us, let's sort of align with this idea of Wu Wei, of not forcing ourselves on the world, and see if we can spontaneously grow into something new, because spontaneity is how the universe is. It's not strung out in a linear fashion. So this is the great work that we all need to do on an individual level first, because it's the individual who's going to change the whole. It's not the Occupy movement, or it's not the Zeitgeist movement that's going to change anything fundamentally, because if the individual hasn't changed, then what's going to change in the new world? Because they're just going to bring the same mode of consciousness into play. And at the moment, the majority's state of consciousness is a separate mode of consciousness, because we see definite forms. We do not see a world of ocean. We do not see waves rising and falling. And this is what the shamanic races can see. This is what all of the Chinese, the Indian, and the Egyptian civilization could see. They can see that the world of forms is nothing more than a massive ocean of consciousness rising and falling, but you don't need to define that. You don't need to be brought into the world of Maya, which is a Sanskrit word, which is basically measurement. You don't need to measure the world, because the world is immeasurable, actually. So it's only our intellect that wants to measure. So
that's amazing. We were just talking about this on the break, and not to interrupt you, I'm sorry. But I had a conversation with an Indian elder here in Winnipeg, and he drew a picture of the sun as we would draw it in preschool, and he drew it with the lines coming straight out. And he said, "This is what's wrong with you white people." And I just laughed, right? Because I mean, civilization was brought to them by us. Okay, fine. But he giggles about it, and I giggle back with him. We've got a good relationship. And he says, you see that there's a definite line to the earth of the sun. When tribally, there is no direct line from the sun to the earth. It comes out like a serpent. It comes out like knowledge. It comes out in waves, and it gets here when the observer observes it. It has nothing to do, there's no measurement. There's no measure,
and that's beautifully, he depicted it like that, Cari. It's a thing of the new developed world, isn't it? It has come from white people, but it has sort of sunk its roots deep into all civilizations on this planet. I've traveled a lot, and what you and I are speaking about now is still foreign to someone in Nepal or India or Egypt, and it's like, wow, like a lot of this knowledge has come from here, but it's been lost. Like there are still only various people who hold this knowledge true. But if we can sort of get out of that linear mode of thinking, which I don't know the answer for that for anyone, because it's their own internal work that they need to get to, but that's when you can have the sage's perception. You can see that all of this reality that we experience is a pattern, is a beautiful process, and if you're caught in the detail, like say, for instance, if there's a war, you can be caught in the detail of the war, or you can see something unfolding on a different level, because actually, in truth, there's a lot more going on when we go through a process of war than what we actually think. That may sound metaphysical, but that's the truth of the matter. And it's the same thing as like when we see an ant colony on the ground, like we'll see an ant colony that's, going crazy, and then a human steps on it. There's something else going on, you know what I mean? It's not a superficial understanding of what we think.
And with that, we're on to our last break of the hour. We'll be back. Oh, no, we're not. Well, we'll be back. It is our last break of the hour with Jason Gregory on American Freedom Radio. Yeah, there's just no fooling us anymore. There's no fooling the children of the revolution. That's who we are. That's why we're here. There's no quieting us. There's no telling us to shh, because we don't listen. Anyway, welcome back to Lifting the Veil with Cari-Lee. Once again, we're joined by Jason Gregory, author of Way of the Weirdo and co-creator of Sacred Sound of Creation, which I suggest everybody looks up on YouTube. It's definitely well worth the time that you take. Now, Jason during the break and Jason and I during the break were talking about the ancient ways. And the idea that, and this has been the topic of discussion through the show, is that we're going back towards what we used to know. And something that I was saying is that I can feel that I have been teetering between both worlds in this. I'm going to be like, the big grand guinea pig here and let you all in on what's going on with me. I find myself constantly struggling with what I know is right. And this sounds like a very childish thing. And then the ego that tears me into wanting to keep certain things that I know aren't good for me or aren't serving me well. The idea of letting go is something that I myself am learning daily. Being as true to myself as possible and not trying to force things is something that I'm really combating with. I didn't realize just how strong my own logical control issues were. The ways that I deal with it are combating it by actually accepting it for what it is, seeing it for what it is, and dealing with it, and not trying to pretend like it doesn't exist and it'll go away on its own or that I'm above it. I don't know, Jason, if you have anything you'd like to add to what you've done and what you do in your life to try and get past these certain things so that you can live more peacefully?
Well, the key word that you said in that, Cari, was control. It's the intellect's developed on a mode of control. So we are an intellectual civilization. When we talk about the intellect, the intellect's neither good or bad. It's an innocent victim as well, but it develops the ego. So it develops the conditioning, it develops the idea of who we are. So, all of these ephemeral titles like Cari's a Canadian, a woman, a feminist or whatever. I'm not saying you're a feminist, Cari, but I'm just saying I'm using these as categories, as what the intellect does. Now, what this does is, as soon as you have a system of conditioning, is, okay, now I can control the situation. And it's like the ancients, what they do is they go, well, they look to the heavens. They look to the way that the planet moves, how other planets move, how the space between that exists, and they look to their own experience, and they go, well, no matter how hard you try, they have a laugh about it, because they go, no matter how hard you try, you can't control your life. It just can't be done. So the whole purpose, we hear this a lot in a lot of the New Age doctrines where, you've got to let go, you've got to let go. But in the truest context, when you come to this situation, you don't have to let go. You just let go, because there's nothing you can do about it. and this is the whole understanding of breaking the ego apart. It's not that you destroy the ego. It's almost a deflation of the ego, because even the ego itself sees that no matter how hard you try, you cannot control your experience. Because, we could say that, we organise this interview. Certain little things can be organised, but every day there's always something spontaneously will pop up that you could never have calculated. In a million years, you couldn't have calculated that certain situation was going to happen. That's either going to bring you into that moment so strong, or you're just going to be able to see it from an objective state. So the whole thing that we need to do in the modern world is we need to get out of the idea that we can control this planet, this universe, the neighbour down the street, my dog in the backyard. We've got to get out of these ideas, and we've got to fully embrace the spontaneity of the universe. We've got to fully embrace how our experience unfolds just like the universe. It unfolds exactly how it is. It's spontaneous. And, you can see this in your own experience. If people say, the universe isn't spontaneous, okay, so tomorrow, calculate every little thing that you're going to do tomorrow by the hour and see if you can achieve all of those. And the answer is, by about the second hour, it'll just be impossible to achieve all of those things. So you can prove to yourself, actually, that the universe is spontaneous. So understanding that means that we need to loosen our grip on the world. We need to loosen our understanding of control, and that we can't control this world. And we're never going to be able to control this world. And the ideas of lording it over nature, of the constant fracking, the mining, the destructions in the Amazon, comes from this understanding that we can control something that is uncontrollable. And we're feeling the effects of that now. So, for those out there who question that the universe is spontaneous, calculate your own experience and see how it unfolds beyond your own will, And when I say beyond your own will, I mean beyond your own ego, because I believe in the truest context, our real will is aligned with the universal will. It's just our ego that gets in the way. It's our conditioning that gets in the way. And this is what I call the great work of eternity, because it's not until we break down all of these illusionary barriers within ourselves that we will understand more about what this vast, infinite space is that we live in. We need to keep that in check. We don't live in something that's limited. We live in a vast, infinite space, which when you even contemplate for a couple of minutes, you think, well, that's pretty crazy. Like, I'm sitting on this ball that's in something that never ends. And, that's something that the intellect can never understand. It's only something that your heart can understand, your intuition, that your intuition knows. So if we can break down a lot of that conditioning and loosen the control, we will move in a different direction. But a lot of people, like what you mentioned, Cari, are going through similar situations. And I'm not going to say that I'm above it either. But we always have this dichotomy of the intellect steps in to try and deal with the situation where we know intuitively that that's not what can heal the situation. We know it deep down, but we still go with the intellect anyway because it's logic, it's reason. That's what we're taught in school. So, if we can get out of that, or we can just somehow, what I feel is slowly happening, which is something that may be a foreign concept to a lot of people, is the intellect is slowly merging into sort of a new relationship with the intuition, which we've never had ever. Like the ancients are the most intuitive beings that have existed. But in some sense, there was not the high intellect. When I feel that the intellect's not something that's evil or bad, I think, as we said, there's always natural patterns and there's natural patterns of growth, etc. I feel that the intellect has grown for a certain reason, to be aligned with the intuition, to understand things, not just intuitively but intellectually. So I don't want to cast a war against the intellect. I just feel that it's the overdevelopment of the intellectual brain, which gives birth to the ego. That's one of the big problems. So, it's just loosening that control, and once you loosen that control, you will see that there's nothing that needs to be forced actually in the world. Yeah.
We're going to talk about more of this after the break. We are now at the last break of the hour. Again, you're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com. This is Lifting the Veil with Cari-Lee. We're joined today by Jason Gregory, author of Way of the Weirdo. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to integrate intellect and intuition, possibly what is holding us back, and little things that you can do in your life to take back that, I want to say that power, but it's not, because it's not yours. It's just, it is. And you kind of swim through it as best as you can. So we were talking before the break about the idea of intellect and intuition meeting together. Yeah. And this is very interesting to me because I don't know. Logic is masculine in my eyes to some extent. Not that I think that women are illogical. That's not what I mean. And no, I'm not a feminist. But I appreciate the balance that male and feminine, masculine and feminine are supposed to be bringing to each other. And I think that that's a lot of the issues that we're facing with all these control mechanisms that we're faced with in our lives, because a lot of them are more of a patriarch type control mechanism. Not to say that I think, everything should be feminine and ovaries and flowers. Well, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if we were to create some type of balance where we were to, feminine is very intuitive, masculine is very logical, this makes sense. So let's finally have a marriage of the two without one having to dominate the other, and allow masculine to be masculine and allow feminine to be feminine. And that's my 2 cents. And if you have anything to add to that, please do.
Well, it's interesting you said that, Cari, because it's a thing we're going through, a process we're going through collectively at the moment. Because, in truth, getting away from the physical identity of a female and a male, the principle of the intellect is masculine and the principle of the intuition is feminine. That's just the way it is. So obviously in a female they would have more receptors open for intuition, and likewise with the male with the intellect. And this is why when a lot of males are profoundly moved by spiritual teachings or profound knowledge, they become a very graceful sort of man, you could say, or they are not feminine in the physical sense, but feminine in just in their consciousness. You see this. They're open, yeah. And what we've built a whole civilization which is only developing the intellectual brain. So we even see women who are striving to be male. We see this sort of misidentification in the world. We see this a lot in the corporate world, where a lot of women strive actually to be exactly like a man. I'm a man myself, and I would like to give the advice I'd to a woman to say, just remain a woman. Men have got enough problems. But we built a whole civilization that's only developing the intellect, and that's why it's a masculine-dominated society. Putting aside the physical aspect of a male, it's a masculine-dominated society. And by me saying that, means it's built on force. It's built on logic and reason. It's built on you need to look at things in a linear fashion. See, the linear model relates to the masculine, and the pattern model relates to the feminine aspect. These are just principles of the whole universe. This is the way that the cosmos is. There's no debating this. This is just how it is. The masculine is active or creative, and the feminine is receptive, which doesn't mean, again, passive in the passivity way. It means that the feminine is its natural trait is humility. It's not force. And this is the whole new dichotomy that we're coming into, because we've built a society built on force. And when you understand that you cannot control any situation, that means you're receptive to experience. And see, the receptive quality of the whole cosmos has been suppressed for thousands of years. And the human expression of that is humility. And this is why in all of the ancient scriptures, especially the Tao Te Ching from China, Lao Tzu always talks about how humility is strength, and a very flowery language. But when you understand that, when you explore your own experience and you throw control out the window, and you don't throw the intellect away, but you sort of tame it, you see that when you align with that receptive principle of the whole cosmos, the feminine principle, you'll see that your humility and the way that you're open to every situation, and I mean every situation, that there is a power in that is beyond an intellectual scope. So, a lot of people say that is the Dharma that's working through you, or Te in Chinese, or, somehow you've merged the individual and the divine will. These are all ideas, but there is that power in that. There is that merging of something that's greater than you, but you're not apart from that. And again, this is just the connection between the masculine and feminine forces within the being, because the self, the aspect of the self is, and I mean the true self here, the deep down you, the eternal you, is masculine and feminine. That's just the aspect of it. So, this is why in a lot of Gnostic traditions and in Hermetica, they talk about God being androgynous, being both male and female, in the metaphysical sense. We're not talking about the physical sense. So, this is
well, it's the only thing that makes any sense. It's the only thing that makes any sense. The idea that the Christian Bible or any religious text that would even begin to say that, from man's loins sprung woman, or anything of the, I'm not saying, I'm just, being a fool right now, but I mean, in all honesty, it goes against nature. It is directly against nature.
It's directly against nature. See, the problem that we do in the modern world, and when I say the modern world, I do mean in the last 2,000 years, is we look at a lot of these religious truths. Now, I want to say religious truths because the only reason religion has gone out of context is because we misinterpret it, terribly misinterpret it. What we do is we read these scriptures and we anthropomorphize the characters within scriptures. So what I mean by that is we give them human qualities. So, when people think of God, they give God a masculine quality, a male. And, for me, it's kind of crazy. What I see in the religious scriptures, and this is sort of getting away from the physicality of the world, is that when they speak of God and nature, they speak of actually masculine and feminine. You can't have one without the other, if you know what I mean. You cannot have one without the other. It's like having sound and light, or sound and matter. What do you have when you have sound and matter? When you have sound and matter, it creates patterns, it creates forms. So, the problem in modern civilization is we misinterpret a lot of these things. We give them human qualities. And, I know people who are in the Christian tradition and who are in the Islamic tradition, the Judaic tradition, even in Hinduism. You'll see the most crazy understandings of their religion because they give them physical qualities. Like, I've spent a lot of my time around the Hindu religion because I've spent a lot of time in Asia. And the way that the woman is suppressed in places like India and Nepal is a travesty. They still, in some places in Nepal, they still, if they have a female as a child, there's still some places where they cast that kid out of the family. They're gone because they're not a male. There's no strength apparently in that. And see, these all come from a physical understanding, a physical misinterpretation of actual scriptures that are meant for transcendence in the metaphysical sense, like transcendence in the sense of that you've got to get out of your conditioning, out of your ego. So, these qualities that the female is not an aspect of God, it's just, I don't know, that's preschool to me. That's training wheels spirituality. That's something that we're growing out of. And, when you understand more of the esoteric understandings, if someone delved into, say, the Hermetic philosophy or even Gnosticism, Gnosticism was the early Christianity before Christ. They talk about God as androgynous. Now, their understanding of that is aligned with the Chinese understanding of the creative and the receptive principles of the I Ching, the first two hexagrams. There's no debate in this because when you look into all ancient scriptures or you look into all shamanic cultures, there's two forces that underlie all of reality, which is the creative and the receptive. But there's not one before the other. They both mutually arise. And this is what all spiritual traditions, especially in the New Age, get wrong because they think that the masculine or God is created first and then somehow the nature is born. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. They have to both mutually arise. And then when you explore that, you find out sort of what that non-duality is. You don't find non-duality, understanding everything as a singular organism. You do not find that in exploring one aspect of reality. You find it in exploring both aspects of reality. So, this aligns also with how the universe is. A lot of people say, what's first? The birth of the universal consciousness. And that's truly not what it is. Because what happens is the universe produces consciousness, and the consciousness evokes the universe. That's just the nature of how it is. Both mutually arise. So, if we can go deep into something like that, then we can understand that, okay, there is obviously a purpose of why there is a female and a male in a physical sense. It would just be ridiculous if we were to say the female is a lesser being or an inferior being. It wouldn't make any sense. For me, that would be understanding that the whole cosmos had made a mistake. Because if the idea of the Judeo-Christian, Islamic, Hindu idea is that the physical interpretation is that the woman is inferior, then that means that we should have built the whole, God then should have created a universe with just males. That would be a world that I wouldn't want to be part of personally, but that's what's
sad too, I have to say, in the midst of all this, where we've seen that we've made men lesser or women lesser, we're now beginning to make men lesser. We're now starting to prop up women with penises. I don't know how else to say it. And taking the role away from the men to try and make the woman stand all on her own without having her own at the same time. A woman has her direct traits that make her who she is, as does a man. And it seems like we're at this tragic time in history where the demasculization of men is coming into play, and let's take all of their masculinity away from them and give it to the pocket, and put it in the woman's pocket somehow. I can remember seeing it when I was still watching television on ridiculous sitcoms and stuff back in, say, like 98 or whatever, we've turned all men into dumb Homer Simpsons that don't need respect. Like, there's another side to this coin. They haven't just been staring at us like all women are evil snakes that plagued the entire planet. You know, it's not just that, but now they're turning around and they're taking the masculinity away from the men too. It's a very, very confusing time. So when you're sitting in the middle of all this, the only thing that seems logical in any of this, logic, is to amalgamate the two and find that settled place inside yourself where you can have masculine and feminine calmly together. Again, it starts with the individual. Yeah,
for sure, Cari, and that's one of the big things, isn't it? It's good that you mentioned that. It's the demasculinization of the male is happening at the moment, and you know, it's kind of I would say probably a collective guilty conscience we've probably had for thousands of years of how we've treated women. So, you know, we never take things in steps as an intellectual race. We go from one side of the coin to the other, and we just flip it over, and there's no sort of gradual process. And, you know, this is only going to confuse, like what you said, it's only going to keep confusing the civilization more and more. And, you know, the dumbed down Homer Simpsons is sort of the common thread for a male, actually, in this world. You know, I come from Australia, and, you know, it's kind of frowned upon if, you know, you have a couple of brain cells working and you're a male. You know, that's kind of frowned upon. You should be a bumbling idiot down at the pub. You know, that's sort of what the stereotypical male in Australia is like. You know, you shouldn't be reading books, or you shouldn't have a kind heart towards women. That's not masculine at all. You should be down the pub, you know, talking about the football or something like that.
That's an overall Western. That's something that I can say for Americans with their football and their baseball, and the Canadians with their hockey and their football and their baseball. I'm not putting down any of these things. Please don't look at it as a judgment from me. I'm just saying that stereotypical male is a very Western-created blasphemy of what the man should be.
Exactly. And you see, it's a very disempowering paradigm, because, you know, you can look into the eyes of, say, a male who is like that, and, you know, we all know intuitively when you look into the eyes of someone if they have some depth in their own being. And what I mean by that is they know more about themselves, more about the universe and their relationship to it, or if they just know the superficial reality. So, you know, they just drink 1,000 beers, they hope their local football team wins the game, and then they go and talk about people behind their back and, you know, try and attract 1,000 women. You know, you can see the light sort of taken out of the eyes of these individuals, which is a sad thing, because the whole civilization at the moment is built on these modes that, you know, women are a trophy and men are just idiots trying to attract that trophy. That's all our world's built on at the moment. So you have the women who
women are not men are not meal tickets, and women are not trophies. We'll leave it at that for now, and we'll be back with Jason Gregory on Lifting the Veil with Cari-Lee on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Welcome back to Lifting the Veil with Cari-Lee on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Once again, Jason Gregory is with us today, author of Way of the Weirdo, and we are talking about all things masculine and feminine and balancing out things and accepting and allowing and not just sitting on your arse and waiting for things to happen, and being the change that you want to see yourself before you expect it to be out there before you, and all kinds of good stuff. So, we were just talking about the masculine and feminine, which I think is a very important thing. We were talking during the break how it was very interesting how Jason, you were talking about the feminine, and then I jumped in and was talking about the masculine. You were on the side, there was no side, but you were defending the feminine, and then I came in and did the same with the masculine, and both of us kind of went, oh wow, that was really cool. So I decided to share how cool we thought that was with you guys. But it's interesting how these little synchronicities happen. And this is what we're talking about when we say if you watch things unfold, they unfold exactly how they need to. There was balance created as, it's just a beautiful thing.
It is beautiful, yeah. And I think that's, this is going into support the feminine again, but, seeing those synchronicities as sort of aligned with the feminine principle as well, because the masculine will always pass off such synchronicities because it's beyond logic. So, that's something of the intuitive sense. So, a lot of us are aligning with that sort of that unfolding in our experience at the moment, which is very important because that'll lead us to different places in this world.
And it's confusing too. Like it's very confusing to go through all of these different feelings as you find yourself balancing off, or that's what I'm calling it. This is Cari's great balancing act this year. Has been this constant tipping of the scales and trying so hard to keep that balance. It's been like my word of the year. If there was, like Pee Wee Herman's crazy word of the day or whatever it is, everybody scream, balance.
But see, really balance is one of the beautiful words, actually, because it's not until we understand balance fully that we even understand what enlightenment is, because, we often give something like enlightenment or evolution a linear quality because we think that it's something to achieve or something to attain. And it's like, no, that's not what it is at all. Enlightenment in its truest context is a balancing act. It's a balancing of your masculine and feminine principles within yourself. So it's like riding a bike, like you sort of fall one way, but then you straighten up at another time. It's like being caught. It's like the difference between a warrior and a sage's perception. Like a warrior will be caught in the detail, but then they'll step back and see the harmony playing out, and they'll think, well, geez, it was stupid of me to be caught in that detail, but they rest in that sort of eternal now, you could say, from an objective state. But it's that constant ebb and flow of life, that constant balance that we discount, or actually that in some sense that we fight. But the thing is, as we are human beings, that's an intrinsic part of us. We cannot escape that. We cannot escape the involution and the evolution of perception, or the expansion and contraction of consciousness. We will never escape that because that's intrinsically part of us. It's all that the sage does, all that the enlightened masters do, is they resonate more on the higher harmonious level, while the others who sort of fight their imbalanced life are stuck in the detail. So.
No, definitely. We're constantly stuck in the detail. Sometimes I feel like I'm warrior and sage fighting with myself. I have the sage sitting there on one side of my shoulder, warrior on the other side. It's not angel devil, It's that warrior that wants to get stuck in the detail and get stuff done, and it's the sage sitting there going, you know better than this. And then, and really, and that's a good place to be. Once again, we're trying the balance.
Exactly. And we've got to understand that, like what we were speaking about before the break, we were talking about how the universe mutually arises. Everything is mutual. It rises, everything has its duplicity. And the problem we have in a lot of spiritual traditions of the modern days, we think that things are found in just one category and they're not found in the duplicity of life. And the whole thing is it's found in the duplicity of life. And this is why in Buddhism they say that you need actually a union of nirvana and samsara. These are Sanskrit words. Nirvana is the meaning of liberation, the meaning of an individual who is liberated from the world of separation. And samsara is basically the world of separation, is sort of the wheel of life, of birth and death, something that a lot of human beings never escape. Our experience is constantly bound to this detail. So why they say you need a unification is basically because of the understanding of what Buddha had, was that all life mutually arises. So he understood that you could not have nirvana without samsara, and vice versa. You cannot have samsara without nirvana. And when you explore that at its depth, you will see that that mirrors qualities within yourself, because, you know, I've been around a lot of people of varying schools of spiritual cultivation, and especially in Hinduism with yoga and the Advaita realm, which is non-duality, and they always find themselves in a prickly situation where they think that they need to ignore their mind and even their physical body. And in doing that, you've already fragmented the world into duality, because you're implying that the mental and physical realm do not exist. So you've missed the point, ultimately. You're eating the menu. You're not eating the meal. So this is the problem in a lot of, especially modern schools of spiritual cultivation, because, again, we've got this concept of forcing ourselves upon the world instead of allowing it to happen. So when someone gets into the realm of, say, hatha yoga, and when I mean by hatha yoga, I mean the yoga of practice, where you stretch the body and you feel the prana or the chi move through your body, or even qigong in Chinese. People get into these realms where they think that they can force themselves upon the universe to gain enlightenment, and it's like, you've missed the point again. You should only be doing yoga or meditation for the very purpose of just doing it, like how you eat food. It shouldn't be a mode. You should not be meditating to achieve a goal. The whole idea is to let go. The whole idea is to understand what we were talking about, is that you can't control the universe. So if you are meditating out there to gain enlightenment, then you've missed the point. And this is what a lot of schools miss. But the masters know, like, you know, you could go to a Zen monastery, and the masters know that, you know, they see the student and they know that they're there to try and force themselves upon God, you could say. But it's never going to work. And usually, but the funny thing is, I think we talked about this in the break, Cari, where you sort of need the intellect and intuition, because the funny thing is, you need to go through that experience of doing all the hard practice, all of the hard spiritual cultivation, getting up at 3:30 in the morning and sitting for 4 hours till your legs are just about to break off. You need to go through all of these experiences to realize what Buddha realized, because Buddha himself went through all of these ascetic practices. And then he sat under the Bodhi tree and finally took a milky soup from a young girl who was herding cattle. And then it came to him, because he let go of all of what he was trying to control, and he was even trying to control his own realization, so his own self-realization. So if we can fully, you know, understand that, we won't impose our will over anything, actually. We won't impose our will over our meditations, over our experience. And, you know, it's only because a lot of spiritual cultivation has come, it's only been popular to the Western psyche for the last 200 years. We're still only working it out. But that's not to say that in the Eastern world they've missed the point as well, because I've been around various schools in the Eastern world, and I feel intuitively from my experience there that a lot of people there are still only eating the menu because they are doing it for some sort of sense of spiritual pride, almost like how an athlete is. You know how you see an athlete has that certain egoic pride about them because they think they are sort of somehow above someone else. You see that in a lot of spiritual schools as well, where you see a lot of yoga masters or a Taoist or something like that who are very up straight. They're almost stiffer than businessmen, you know. You know,
I hear it. I hear it in a lot of the talk show radio people, people on talk shows. I listen to as many as I can, as often as I can, which is very complicated when you're trying to detach as much as I am. But the thing that I see is that a lot of us, some of the best radio shows are coming out of people that haven't got a clue and that don't pretend like they've got the answer, and that, or even say that they do. It's that whole idea of you see Buddha on the road, kill him. There's no definite. The minute you think you have it, it's gone. And it's very, very complicated in I find in this world to get that sense of, no, you don't know anything. A friend of mine, Max, he always poses the question, what do you know for sure? And if you sit back and you realize, well, not much. You know, it gives yourself the ability to allow yourself to let go even more.
And this is why I said in the Sacred Sound of Creation, the journey is the destination, because, you know, your life is a pattern. There's no definite goal, you know, and this is what we need to work out. I mean, like you said, you can't control your particular goal. You know, it can't be done. And the more knowledge you accumulate, you work out it's still, you know, people will do this because people will research something for their whole life, but they'll realize that they've never really attained what they were after. All they were doing was accumulating more information. I'm not saying information is wrong. I don't want to split anything into duality, but what you will find is if you explore enough information, you'll keep understanding that what you were trying to achieve, in a sense, is unachievable. It's like trying, you know, modern science and organized religions, they try to categorize what God is or what the universe is. And that's something that we can never do on an intellectual level. Many people may disagree with me, but you will never understand intellectually what that mystery behind all the forms of life is, that substantial reality. You will not categorically know what that is. You may intuitively know and feel that there's something else because you can feel it deep down, but you are not going to intellectually understand it like what science is trying to understand. It's not going to happen. And see, that's one of the biggest humbling effects on an individual, because when they understand that, shit, like I'm never going to be able to understand the totality of my being here in this world, why I'm alive, is a pretty humbling effect. All that you can do then is enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. Learn along the way if you want, or unlearn if you want. It's up to you. It's not for me to tell you what to do. Usually, if you want to unlearn, what I've found and what I've concurred with other masters is that when an individual begins to unlearn, or they start to shed their ego or their conditioning, new knowledge arises. New knowledge meaning knowledge of wisdom arises, that they need to learn more about themselves, and that's a process that we all go through for our whole life. You know, I'm not going to say to anyone here today that I'm living my life to reach a particular goal of enlightenment. That's absurd. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to enjoy the process of my life, the pattern of unfoldment. And when you understand that, you enjoy that process, that pattern of unfoldment, the more that you come into the present state, because there's nothing to achieve in the past or the future, actually. So you live more in a condensed, spontaneous reality, because that's where it all is.
Yeah, it's totally what you're saying. I'm kind of in awe here, because as Jason's talking, I'm able to relate to my life. And this year, starting last year, my husband left his scheduled work. I don't know how else to put that. Like, he doesn't work on a schedule anymore. My children are no longer in school. My daughter for 2 years, my son for 1. The idea is that we've been unschooling them and trying to unschedule each other this entire year. This is something we talked about in the break. Doing this it's scary, it's not easy, but it's something that we had to do for our family. We couldn't make any more excuses up of why we worked the 9-to-5 jobs and held the mortgages and what, all of it. None of it was making any sense anymore. So we kind of divorced ourselves from those things that weren't doing right for us. And what happened was other things came in to take their place. John always has some type of work in order to provide food for the family. We don't go without. We have wonderful friends that have turned into soul family that are around us, supporting us in a way that I've never had support from anybody before, not even family. And that's not putting my family down. It's just the dynamic that I was surrounded with back home. Being brought out of my comfort zone, out of Ontario and now living in Manitoba, all of these things were a way for me to break my scheduling in order to allow.
Exactly.
Let's talk about more of this after the break. Before the break, I was telling you about the way that my family's life has been. I'm going to say the same thing I said to Jason on the break. I'm not doing this to say, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's not what it is. It's like okay, we're saying, you don't have to. These are the things that you could do to make things better. And so if I show you an example of how we've been changing our lives, then you can say, okay, well, then you're not just saying it, you're living it. Because a lot of times you'll find people say, well, live it and then come talk to me. Well, we have been disassembling our schedules, lives for this entire year, honestly, for the last 3 years, but like really hardcore this year. And it's true. The synchronicities follow you. The universe opens up for you when you're receptive. Now, I'm not saying that we've been receptive this entire time. We keep banging our head against certain walls, but it's getting better. It's getting easier. We're becoming more open as a family and proving that change does come within. And it's very, very tumultuous, and it's very difficult, and it's not easy. But those greatest changes take sometimes the most suffering, because you have to let go of some stuff that's pretty heavy in order to be able to move beyond them. And some of us cling on to some of our programming really tightly. I'm one of them. I don't even realize it half the time. But again, we're with Jason Gregory, and this show isn't about, me trying to, glorify my life, because that's not what it is. But I just want to set the example that this can be done, and it's not perfect, and it's constant every day it's the journey. It's not the destination.
Yeah. And it's, with what you said being the example, Cari, it's good because, I don't think your example is different to anyone else's life, actually, because we do stumble, we do run into a wall, and then we sort of dust ourselves up, and often we keep moving, because the ones who are truly letting go, all of the weirdos out there, are learning I think, the universal understandings of the pleasure and pain principle, actually, because, we've built a whole society pursuing pleasure. And, that's what's got us in trouble, because our pursuit of pleasure is based on our conditioning. So as soon as you've done that, you've imposed your will upon the other world. This is why we have wars. This is why we have injustice around the planet, because we are pursuing pleasure attuned to our own conditioning and not understanding that actually pain is also a part of the cosmos. So when an individual begins to let go, what do they experience? Immense pain. Pain psychologically, even physically sometimes, and spiritually. And they experience this pain because it's needed to grow. You need to have painful experiences to grow. That's just the way it is. Any of us, anyone who is listening, or you and I, Cari, can concur that every painful experience that we've had has helped for our expansion in consciousness, actually, as allocated for growth, because you've learnt something from a particular situation that if you were still in the modern egoic state, you would just be ignoring painful experiences and trying to pursue more pleasure, which is the common state of a human being these days. And this is what's got us in immense trouble. And, for those who are letting go, like yourself, who are stepping away from a machine which is a dying pattern, is understanding this pleasure and pain principle more and more in trying to achieve your natural state, because nature itself concurs to the pleasure and pain principle. Flowers have great times to bloom, but then they may go through a thunderstorm. It all concurs on all levels. And the more we, as a civilization, step into the new paradigm, the new pattern, which I believe is emerging, which is the original pattern of all organic life, which is self-governance, then, to break away from something we've been so dependent on for so long is going to have a certain amount of pain, because we need to go through that to be able to self-govern ourselves. That's just the way it has to be. You cannot step out of the machined way of life into a beautiful Zen garden with a beautiful mansion off in the middle of Manitoba in a week. It just can't happen. That wouldn't make any sense. There'd be no journey, no experience in that. So there has to be elements of pain in the experience to understand more about yourself, because we are all unraveling our own identity, in the sense we're unraveling our own consciousness to understand more about ourselves. And we truly have to understand how we are part of that natural order of the universe. That's just the way it is. And a human being is not apart from that. And this is the Chinese idea of Li, which is Li actually means the grain and wood and the fiber of jade, which basically just means that the underlying essence of the cosmos is the same through all patterns, and all patterns are self-governing. So when we align with that, then you'll know even more and more about who you are and your relationship to the universe. But we've built a model it's dependent in the grossest sense. I don't want to say that we can ever reach a state of total independence physically, because that's absurd. We are interdependent on all organisms of the planet, but to be independent in the sense that you're self-governing your own particular experience, your own life, is where we should be moving as a species. I don't want to say we should be moving, but I think that's the natural order, the new pattern that's going to take place, because we've gone through thousands and thousands of years of being dependent on something that's it's systematically flawed. Because it's built on a linear model, it's systematically flawed. It's not aligned with the universe. So when you have a self-governing system, it aligns with the spontaneous nature of the cosmos. So, there's no ifs and buts about it. That's just the way it is. So, the system model is flawed. We don't need any more wars or any more market crashes to understand that. So the individual itself can't in a sense, it can't just intellectually do it. That would be sort of a cop-out. They have to be naturally impelled within to understand this natural process of their life aligned with the universe and in a self-governing way. So, I feel yourself, Cari, and me as well have been going through this process for years, because I'm a good supporter. I'm a strong supporter of getting back to sustainability. I don't know the ins and outs of all plant life, and that I'm not going to delude the listeners into that. But I've got a common interest in getting back to the natural way, not just because I oppose the machine. It's not because I oppose the machine. It's because I just know that that's just the natural order of how things are going to be, and I want to align with that.
And I think that's something that we talked about on the break, was a lot of us are just compelled to do this right now. We're intuitively being drawn that way. And I'm very happy to call you a brother in this. And I'm incredibly happy that you came onto the show today. And just before we head out, can you tell the good listeners all the wonderful places that they can find you and how to contact you?
First of all, I want to say thank you too, Cari, and you're truly a sister, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. I mentioned it actually on a couple of shows recently, that I feel that a lot of the great work that's being done individually and collectively is on the grassroots level. Actually, I feel it's in the people who are accessible, the people who have a kind heart and a kind ear for the average Joe, where I don't think you can find that in a lot of the mainstream arena. I think it's in the grassroots that things are changing. So thank you for all your work. And for the listeners, I just want to, you can just go to my website at oneworldwithin.com, and you can find all of my social media networks there. You can see all the updates, and you can even email me personally. My email's on the contact page at oneworldwithin.com.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Like I said, thank you so much for the listeners tuning in today. Next week, Saturday, November 24th, we have Rob Slonka, from www.healinghut.net to discuss alternative cancer cures. He cured his cancer, and we're going to talk all about that with him. And also a very special pre-recorded show is going to be done as far as I've scheduled for the 27th of November with Hyrosonic. For those of you that don't know, that is Ben Stewart and the band Hyrosonic. They're together. It's not like it's just his band. It's the whole bunch of them. And I'm going to have the group in studio. Their studio, live on Skype, pre-recorded for the guests. And we're looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Jason Gregory, for joining the show today. To everybody that's listening, peace, love, lollipops. Just be good to each other and start within you. And if something feels like you shouldn't be doing it and it's not serving you, then stop doing it. And from Angela Foreman, a great quote, "The one thing we know is we do not know. If we think we do, then we do not." Thanks so much. See you again next week. Peace.